No, Team Cherry Bros. What is this? What is this? Are Team Cherry coping and seething about not winning the Game of the Year award? Are they really sitting there and bitching about getting overshadowed by a a game from a big publisher? Expedition 33 did come from a big publisher, by the way. Are they really sitting there and getting angry and upset? Well, the reason why we aren't going to win Game of the Year is that our game is too difficult. Unbelievable. Hollow Knight's developers say they expect Silksong to lose out at the Game Awards. Expedition 33 is exceptional and broadly palatable, whereas we're on that knife's edge where it appeals to some and infuriates others. Yeah, it infuriated me because it wasn't a good game. Okay, so obviously I'm like one of the biggest Expedition 33 critics on the planet. I think it's a bunch of people who don't play RPGs, who don't know anything about them, who don't understand that Expedition 33 is not unique or special in any way, shape, or form. Like Expedition 33 is slop. But at the same time, seeing Team Cherry just kind of like sit there and imply that Expedition 33 is going to win because it's too mainstream. Funny, funniest thing I have ever seen. You can tell they're mad. You can tell they're angry because Silksong took like 7 years to make, and they really thought that there would be this big breakout title, that this would be this huge thing, this huge deal. And Silksong launched, and nobody cares about it anymore. It was a major disappointment. I got through all the way to Act 3, on only 6 masks, by the way. I only had 3 hits in the entire game. Never found any more than that. 3 hits in the entire game, 6 masks, beat Act 3, and I hated the game. Like, it was just complete garbage. It was not well produced. It was not well presented. It was like a slog. Act 2, you could have cut like everything out of Act 2 and like lose absolutely nothing. The game was woke. It had like some subversive elements to it that I didn't actually see in my playthrough. I didn't find out about that until later. But yeah, Silksong as a whole was a massive disappointment and was so terrible that I no longer even consider myself a Hollow Knight fan. Okay, retroactively, I hate Hollow Knight more because of how bad Silksong was, and I think I'm not the only one that feels that way. Silksong was so underwhelming to people that nobody's talking about this game, and nobody thinks it really has any kind of shot at winning any game awards. It is going to be completely stomped by Expedition 33. If it wasn't for like the legacy of Hollow Knight, it probably would never have even been nominated. Which again kind of goes into like the problem with the Game Awards in general, where it feels more like uh, legacy matters a lot, because you always keep seeing like PlayStation and Naughty Dog get nominated for things when like they haven't done shit. Like that's a really common reoccurring problem with these shows. But for me, like seeing this happen, seeing Hollow Knight Silksong come out and just be this completely underwhelming to the point where nobody thinks it's going to win. Right up there with Hades 2 as another major indie game disaster. It kind of spells out something that I think a lot of people don't really realize, is just how difficult it is for indie developers to come up with a sophomore hit. I had this problem too when I put out Eye of the Dragon. It was stupidly successful right out of the gate. And then Cruel and Beautiful, Lauren Frey, uh yeah, when Cruel and Beautiful and more Cruel and Beautiful did not do nearly as well because it was so different. And then Rabbit Hole was different than that. My sales didn't recover until Lauren Frey came out, and that was like the highest pre-order amount of pre-orders I ever got in my books. It is very difficult for an indie creator to put out a sequel, because on one hand you have people who like demand something to be exactly the same, and then you have people who want something different. So no matter what happens, no matter what you do, you're gonna like alienate a good chunk of your audience. And because you're like a fledgling creator who doesn't have like a lot of stability, who's just trying to find his footing, like they are going to go elsewhere and kind of forget about you, honestly. Like, that was something I struggled with until, like, relatively recently, and I think Team Cherry is gonna have the same problem because they are not putting out enough content to justify their development cycle. Silksong took, like, 7 years to make, and it was worse than, like, Metroid Dread, okay? It took 7 years to make, and it was mogged by Donkey Kong Bonanza, okay? There have been so many other Nintendo games that have just been better than Silksong in the past 7 years that Silksong just doesn't come off all that remarkable. Like there's nothing about it that really sticks out. We got Samus Returns in 2017, the same year as Hollow Knight, and now we're getting Metroid Prime 4 the same year as Silksong. And with the way things are looking now, Metroid Prime 4 is probably going to be way better. There's just no getting around it. Like, we had to wait years and years for a product that just didn't live up to expectations, while Nintendo was putting out better products like every month or so. So that even if you were disappointed by something like Hyrule Warriors or like I don't know, Ever Oasis or something, you got like, plenty you had plenty of other things to play. Like Team Cherry does not have the capacity for that, and they never will. And they're already talking about how they can't maintain this level of quality, how they have no intention of producing a Hollow Knight 3, how they don't know if how many games they'll be able to put out. Because the entire team revolves around them and putting in like the amount of effort and hours that they've been putting into this. And the end result of all that time and effort was something that was pretty much identical to the original game. Only the only difference is that you play as Hornet this time. Like Hollow Knight Silksong is just extremely underwhelming. It's boring. It just didn't live up to expectations. It got mogged at like the Game Awards. It's gonna get mogged at the Game Awards. Like even the creators are saying this now. And like honestly, like when they do announce their next project, I expect a significant chunk of the audience is not going to be too thrilled. I think a lot of people have not finished Silksong, have no interest in DLC. I think this game was already too bloated. It was like it just feels as if this is just some massive disaster in the making. I feel like nobody really wants to acknowledge that this game was a complete and total disaster. That Hollow Knight Silksong has just completely failed. That it just did not leave an impact, that it is not going to be remembered as the all-time greatest Metroidvania, Metroid-like, I should say. That Metroid Dread, I think, has already long surpassed Hollow Knight and Silksong. People argue that like, well, Hollow Knight sold more. Like, yeah, because it was sold at 15 bucks. Okay. Like Metroid is actually relevant. People will actually play Metroid games like 20 years after release. Nobody's playing Hollow Knight now. Okay. Nobody's playing Silksong now. This was Hollow Knight's like major chance to establish itself as some major cultural icon in the gaming space. And the way things are looking now, it was a one-off success. Much like Celeste before it, it will completely crumble into dust and become irrelevant. People will move on. People will forget Team Cherry ever existed, and they will never again put out another game. And it all begins here with this complete, absolute L at the Game Awards.